welcome to Conversations in Anarchy. This is Catherine Bleish. I am this year's co-producer for Anarchapulco, and I am so pleased to be having another conversation with our tribe, with our community here on Zoom, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all over the internet, where our community at large is able to come together and really share some quality time, diving deep into really interesting topics every Tuesday. And today we have a topic that is possibly controversial, possibly sensitive, and it could be kind of loaded in some ways. So I just want to remind everyone that we are going to dance beautifully together no matter where we fall on the opinion spectrum. Today I am joined, as always, by two of my favorite people, Angel and David from Anarchapulco. Would the two of you please welcome yourself? Angel?
Hey, I am Angel Robinson. I am an anarchist, a recovering statist. I am the editor of the Anarchist Guide to the Galaxy, the editor on the Anarchapulco blog, and I am working with David to bring you free your family camp activities. I am all things philosophical, I guess. And I spend my time thinking a lot about how we should live in the world, how we can be better people to each other. And that's how I came to Anarchy. And it's why I want to share it with all of you.
Right on. So happy to be with you all today. My name is David Rodriguez. I dream of a free world where there's peace and voluntary relationships happening every day throughout. Been attending Anarchapulco since the beginning. And as Angel mentioned, helping produce the family camp stage. And I want to empower families and parents to remove their children from the compulsory school system and start pursuing their passions and their dreams and live a life that they love. I'm a principal of a private school that does accelerate graduation. And I'm so happy to be with you talking about this important topic of life and choices and freedom. And it's going to be fun. I hope you guys all join us.
Awesome. Yes, the education portion is so important because our little people are the future of this planet, and it really matters the decisions that we are making today for them on their behalf. So anyway, before we get into this topic, David alluded to it, we're going to be talking about choice. We're going to be talking about life. We're going to be talking about stem cells, this kind of world of abortion, parental rights, these types of things, and how it relates to anarchy. But first, I want to go over a couple guidelines here for this beautiful conversation that we have every single week. First and foremost, we're going to try to keep the meetings to an hour. If the conversation is just rolling and things are happening, we will carry it through. This is an open format dialogue. We start out with a little back and forth between David, Angel, and I, and then we open the floor to you. We have moderators watching the chat rooms on Facebook and Twitter, on YouTube, DLive. You can leave comments there, and there's a chance that they will get brought up on camera. Now, if you are really wanting to get involved, you can join us on the Zoom link, and that gives you the option to turn on your microphone or your camera, and when the time is right, become an active participant in the actual conversation itself. You can also join Zoom and not turn on your camera, not turn on your audio, but you can participate in the chat box, and we are watching that. We do interact, those of us who are here. We also have moderators drawing things to our attention if we miss something, so please join us. Feel at home. This is a family. We're a tribe. We're a community of like-minded, evolving people. And this is our time to come together every single week and have a beautiful conversation. So we're going to start by talking about the key points. We're going to take questions and open the floor and have conversation. We want to let you know that you can raise your hand by hitting the raise hand option on Zoom so that we know you want to speak. That's a great way to get our attention. I can't see all of the video screens at once, so even if you're actually raising your hand, I may not see it. So using that function is advised. I would love it if everybody would write where they are tuning in from. We have an international audience, so put in the comments where you are joining us from in the world. We have people who join us regularly from Belize, from Europe, from Australia, all over the planet, and we would love to hear where you are from. Of course, there are people from Acapulco. I see Ken in there, CryptoPoco, coming in live right now. Another Acapulco. So yeah, we've got our people moving down there. I mentioned earlier we believe in nonviolent communication, and this is a conversation that probably has a wide spectrum of opinions, and that's okay. We're going to love each other through this conversation. So please be gentle in your communication, both in how you receive things and in how you put them out there, because none of us here want to cause harm to anyone else. Now, we are sort of going along with our ebook called Anarchist Guide to the Galaxy. This was written by David and Evan, and it was edited by Angel. It's a really great piece of literature and information that you can use to teach other people or learn yourself about anarchy and some of the basic principles. So we use that as a read-along. You can download that at anarchapulco.com. So with that being said, today we are going to be talking about choice, about life, about abortion, about stem cells, and we're going to keep this kind of loose because we're not sure where the conversation is going to go. This is a really interesting subject when it comes to anarchy, because we believe in non-aggression. We believe that our rights end where another person's begin. And so when we're talking about parental rights, the right to choose, the right to abort, the right to terminate a pregnancy for whatever reason, David brought up in the pre-show the question, when does life begin? So this is the spectrum that we are entering into today, and I'm really excited to dive in. So David, you brought that up in the pre-production chat we were having, and I would love it if you could jump off from there, because I think that's kind of an interesting launch point.
Yeah, absolutely. I am naturally a man, so I don't never have a baby in my stomach, but I hope to create these things. And so this is a conversation I want to be participating in without the state. And I think this is going to be the theme, is it's between man and wife, and if there's no man or whatever situation, it's a very sensitive decision. And the question is, for me, does it begin when the sperm hits the egg, or when the heart starts, from 4 to 5 to 6 weeks, something like that, or sometime later? Because if we're someone who values human life, which I'm sure all of you do, and you want peace and respectful relationships, when will it be moral or acceptable to make that choice? And it is a personal choice. So other than, as we've kind of discussed and reviewed, like situations of rape, of deformity, of, the threatening life of the mother, I mean, these are all very difficult decisions in addition to bringing another human life into the world. So whether the couple or the mother decides to end the pregnancy, they'll have to think about that for the rest of their life. I have people in my family who have gone through that decision. And so they've had mixed feelings about that, and what they should have done or wanted to do, or regrets, things like that. Or if you have a child and they grow up to be some killer like Hitler or something like that, it's like, I wonder what his mom was thinking about, So it's a really difficult decision. And I'm here to learn from all y'all what your thoughts all are. But I think if I can get to the point where it's like, this is when human life begins, then it makes it difficult for me to, say, pull the plug on that life. Again, despite some of those different possibilities that I mentioned, I don't need the state coming into my bedroom, into my hospital room, whatever it might be. They should stick the hell away, as they should with all services. And because it's very difficult, it's so challenging. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the matter. And the last part is something that's relevant. Some of you may know or not, is that in New York, they recently approved the final 9-month abortion you can do up until the full term. So I think that's a little bit extreme. But if I'm in that situation, I would think differently. But it's kind of a case by case of when life does begin, and what should I do as the father and the mother? What should we do? And maybe there's a spiritual community or moral or whatever type of support network around. And that's what we need. We need support. Life is so precious, and how to make a great decision for our family and for the unborn. The last part is, when would the child be considered to own themselves? Upon birth, for sure, and then how far into the womb. And, there's the kind of the black and white of, are you pro-choice? Are you pro-life? It's like, I'm pro-self-ownership, whatever that means. So, this is kind of the new paradigm of where we can explore of, when does the baby own themselves? This is a real new concept, I think, at least for this conversation, of where we want to paint the picture of where humanity can go and where society can go. Definitely, we don't need these third-party intergenerational organized criminals tell us what to do with our children. What do you think, Angel?
I agree with pretty much all of what you said. I think it's such a complex issue. With anything that we're talking about, it's what the state does is one size fits all. It creates a policy, and everyone has to, independent of the individuating circumstances, just abide by the law, and or to the extent that there are ways to get around the law, it really makes it difficult. And there's all these hoops to jump through and things. They put barriers in your way that make it even more difficult to make the difficult choice of, how you're going to move forward when you're faced with the decision of whether you will alter your life and bring a life into the world or not. And so I think it really is a personal. So this is my opinion. I think it is a personal choice. I think it has to be something that you consult your own ethical code and you make decisions for yourself and for your family. On the other hand, I will say that I very much can empathize with someone who believes that life begins at conception. I can empathize with the idea that, because even if you say life begins at conception, what we as anarchists will say is that you do have a right to use self-defense, right? And so now, well, if life begins at conception, can I use violence against someone to stop them from ending that life? I think, I can see how you can travel many different ways and come to different conclusions. And I always like to empathize with people who really do have a different perspective from the one I have, and put myself in that position. If I believe I'm not sure I do, but if I believe that, how would I feel about that? And then kind of thinking about how I will communicate with the person. It can also empathize with my perspective, and then find solutions. So I think we can have very different ideas about when life begins, but come up with solutions together and actually be unified in how we move forward, how we mitigate. Because I don't think anybody's pro-abortion. I don't think there's well, there are some eugenicists out there, but I mean, for the most part, people value life, and they want you to be able to make decisions that are good for you. They want you to be able to raise children and have families. I think they just see that there's complexity with that kind of a decision. And so I think for people on either side, or no matter where you are in the spectrum, I think what we can do is come together to figure out how we mitigate the problems that might lead someone to make the decision to terminate a pregnancy, because usually there are reasons behind that. And so that's kind of where I like to go when talking about this kind of a thing, right? The debate about when life begins. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Or what life is, or what a soul is, or what consciousness is, or when it starts to become relevant. I don't know. And that's really going to be very subjective to whoever you are, depending on your experiences. You're going to believe something different. And I don't want the state coming in and pitting us against each other and forcing us into a war about it, when generally speaking, without the state, we would kind of live and let live and not involve ourselves in the personal lives of other people.
I love that. And David and Angel, I just want to say, I feel really appreciative about the way you both are communicating right now. And I hear a lot of questions being asked. And that was something we talked about on a previous episode when we talked about how to talk about things with other people during the holidays and times like that. And I hear a lot of questions being asked, and they have me thinking right now. I mean, truly, when does life begin, and when does a human being own themselves? And when do other people have the right to intervene? And I think something that's coming up for me so far in this conversation as it relates to government is when people's decisions are forced. And to me, I think that's probably a baseline where we can all agree that nobody should be forced to abort a child. Nobody should be forced to be sterilized. And I would venture to say that in a lot of circumstances, nobody should be forced to not do something either, right? Like, as sovereign human beings, we do have the right to make our own choices. Now, are there consequences to the choices we make? Yes, no. But we've been reading some interesting news recently, and I think one of the most interesting was this ectopic pregnancy Ohio bill, where basically if there is according to The Guardian and other news sources, I haven't read the actual bill, but if there is an ectopic pregnancy, meaning it's not viable, it's the fetus has been implanted in the wrong place, a doctor has to then re-implant it by law. So to me, this is really crossing into the line of force. Right now, we're forcing doctors to do things that may or may not even be medically possible, let alone medically sound. But it's taking out the right of the doctor, because I think in many instances, if there were people making a choice to, for example, terminate a pregnancy too far along to where maybe the life would be viable on its own, I would imagine doctors would say no. But here we are right now, 2019, crossing in to this area where doctors can't say no, right? And so that's really interesting to me. And this opens up a whole can of worms, because we can talk about the mother, we can talk about the family unit, but there's also the doctors. And at what point do doctors begin to back out of the medical establishment and stop participating? At what point do they quit doing what they're doing, the good that they're doing, because they're being forced to do things that maybe they aren't comfortable with? Do their lives matter too, right? Don't they have a right to make those choices, to do that or to not do that? I don't know if anyone has any response to that specifically, but kind of just thinking here.
Yeah, it's the state, once again, taking the decision away from you and your doctor. And I do not want to gloss over the article. I read that article too. I don't want to gloss over the fact that this bill requires doctors to perform a procedure that is not a real procedure. This is just not a thing that is done. And it just goes to show you how stupid government is that these people get together and they're trying to create laws in fields where they have no expertise. They are, for the most part, professional politicians, and they deal in deals. That's what they deal in. They deal in deals, and they're not professionals who can make decisions like this or make laws that apply to everyone clearly, because I think in the article, I think the doctor said it was science fiction, right? He referred to this, and yet it's the law. I mean, that's what happens when you have, this applies to everything. It's like you have all of these politicians creating laws about economics. They don't know anything about economics. That Ocasio woman, she has no idea what she's talking about. Right. Bernie Sanders, no idea what he's talking about with respect to economics. Yeah. And he is just spouting stuff and in control of policy. And that's the problem with government. So I think, always taking it back to wherever you are on the spectrum, the government is stupid. They're really stupid.
Yes, absolutely. It is. And this is the evolution we're going towards. Some of you guys know this is the theme of evolve. We have to take it from the left, right, pro-life, pro-abortion, and to transcend it and say it's a personal decision. I think it's the one of the former speakers who spoke in 2017, the smart economist from Loyola University, Walter Block. I think he promotes the eviction type perspective, which is like, this is your body and there's kind of a predator or a trespasser in the body or something like that. So it's like, wow, what a perspective. Hey, that's his choice or whatever choice. But this third party that is coming into your bedroom to say what to do is the real issue. And they also have something like you mentioned, eugenics. There are programs to eliminate certain races. And I want to read you what Margaret Sanger wrote, just so you know what kind of ideas they had, because in 1931 or 33, there was something in Indiana called the Indiana Procedure, forced sterilization of the, quote, mentally unfit. So this is when, like, Galton, his ideas were starting to come around. where there are certain people that are better than other people. And this is what she said in 1922. She said, quote, Slavs, Latin, and Hebrew immigrants are human weeds, a dead weight of human waste. Black soldiers and Jews are a menace to the race. So this kind of brings in the extra fuel of, wow, giving your rights or your kind of moral thought process to some other organization is not smart. And so we want to help bring it back to, wow, if it's a difficult situation, then that's up to the mother and the father. But the state is this terrible organization. And if we can get throughout that, then we can understand where you come from, whether you believe in the eviction type philosophy or life begins at conception or, 2 months or 6 months or whatever you might believe. We can understand it that you want to make the right choice, as we all do. But where is that line, and what do you personally believe? I think might lead to the philosophy of like creating your own worldview. Like, what do you believe, and where is this decision have to be made? Well, between man, woman, or man, woman, however you decide, however you live your life. But it doesn't need this extra, rare, useless organization out there that just uses coercion and violence. We don't need those guys.
Yeah, David, it's interesting to talk about that because when does life begin? If it's being determined by a group of people and then imposing that opinion on others, that basically removes freedom of choice for an entire group of people, right? Because it is so personal. I know that for me, the life of my babies that I carried to term, it began as soon as I knew about them. And that moment, they were alive for me and I felt connected to them. But many women actually miscarry and don't know it, right? So when does life begin? And there was a group of people in Pennsylvania who thought on this article came out November 27th, 2019, okay? So like right now, we are looking in Pennsylvania at a group of people deciding that life begins immediately at conception and that there must be death certificates issued for any fertilized sperm and egg union that does not even properly implant, if they don't implant. And this to me is incredible because here we have this very personal subject that we're talking about, right? When does life begin? You have this small group of people saying, well, it begins when the egg and the sperm come together. Well, that happens before it implants into the uterus wall and may not ever implant into the uterus wall. And in Pennsylvania, these lawmakers want to issue death certificates. How would that be regulated? And Emily in the chat right now said the sperm and the egg are already alive. What? That just blew my mind. Whoa. Okay, Emily. Wow, that literally just cracked my head in half.
I agree. I've never heard that. I've never heard that perspective either. But that's a good point because the sperm is like swimming around. He's just not connected. He or she's not connected to the egg. So again, I mean, what do y'all think? This is a really powerful. Life is alive, and I guess the egg is alive too. I mean, it's part of the body. I don't know much about the female eggs. Apologize, but what do you think?
It's okay. You probably know all you need to know.
Well, Emily said life comes from life. And isn't that just the basis? In a previous conversation, we were talking about food and eating, and Misty, who is doing the retreat, she had said that, we live in this world where we eat each other to survive. It happens all throughout the entire planetary ecosystem, right? And what does that do? That's life creating life, right? That's life is the building block of life. And so how far back do we go in tracing life to determine when something becomes a crime? Is it when a baby can be born and survive on its own that aborting it would be criminal in a society? Is it when it implants into the uterus that it would become criminal? Is it when the sperm and the egg unite? Is it when the man ejaculates? Okay, like, when does it become a punishable waste of life? This is a really fascinating question. And I think ultimately the bottom line always here is that this is not a decision for government. This is not a decision for one group of people or another. And, the moderator's asking, why should it be punishable? I'm talking about in the context of laws and legality. I don't think it should be, right? Necessarily. Now, obviously, if somebody deliberately stabs a pregnant woman who's about to give birth, and that is an intentional murderous act, right? And that's kind of a different topic here, but we're talking about the creation of life, and when is it okay to cease the forward momentum that's taking place? And wow, it's kind of heavy stuff. I definitely don't have the answers.
No, it is heavy. One of the other kind of maybe transcendental ideas is starting communities, right? So I have a group called Voluntary Village Creators where it's let's just forget the government entirely. Maybe we got to get a land. Maybe it's 5 people or 10 people or 100 or whatever it is. So in that community, I don't know if I posted right here, would a voluntary abortion be considered a crime? I don't think it can be. I mean, when does human life begin? And it's between the mother. If the mother truly believes in the eviction type philosophy, then she's doing what she feels morally justified to do. And then she's got to live with that decision. As I mentioned, I have family members who had an abortion, and she knew it was a daughter. And then, that's 20 years ago or something. And now kind of lingering, she has sons. She has 2 sons. But then, what about if I would have had a daughter? So if somebody can be around her and advise her, whether it's, it's not a rape, it's not a threatening the mother, threatening the child. If somebody's around and say, hey, I know you're 19 or whatever, however old you are, or you're 16 or whatever it is, you have the husband left or you have no money, maybe, might be the only chance. And it reminds me of Tupac Shakur, because I don't know if you know this, of course, he got murdered sadly at age 25. He had an abortion. I think he was 22 or 23. And to see how he created art, and I would say he had good intentions to empower humans and poetry and music and these kind of things. I'm thinking, what if he would have had that child? Even if it was some, hood rat quote, let's say, or some lady, right? And he would have a legacy to leave behind to carry on his story, his mother being a Black Panther and him fighting for freedom. I think he had good intentions. He had a record called Illuminati. So he wasn't with them, right? He was saying, get rid of the Illuminati. When you give them power, or when you believe in their power, you give away your own personal power. And so, what would have happened, So these other lives, but, like you said, Kat, I don't have the answer. It's just a matter of, in your own voluntary village, what would you do? Let's say you had let's say 20 families together. I think us dealing with understanding the empathy and the compassion that we have for other humans is you got to live with that decision. I'll support you either way, really. It's just don't aggress against me, but, what's your own belief about the child and where they might be headed? Or, as Jen mentioned in the comments, do they have the right to self-determination? When does that equality begin? Or is that even a relevant question or idea?
Yeah, I want to get back to what you said about Walter Block and the eviction and the idea of eviction. One thing to consider really is that if you are a mother, your resources are now being used to take care of this baby. You will be the one who's expending the energy and having to eat for 2, which I don't think is a real thing, really. But anyway, all of the decisions you make, and so that seems to me a very deeply personal thing. How much of my being and my essential being am I going to, and I'm mostly empathizing here and hoping you guys are coming with me along this journey for empathizing with women in this position, but how much of my life force am I willing to give up right now? And it's one thing if you go in and terminate the pregnancy, right? But the way that Walter Block talks about it as an eviction, I mean, if the baby can survive, and there's someone there who will take it, that's one thing. But if the baby can't survive, if you're at 3 weeks or 6 weeks or something like that, like why don't you have the right to say, no, I'm not giving any more resources? You know, no one has a right to my resources at all. Even when your children are born, they don't have a right to your resources. You obviously can't go like kill them, but they don't have a right to your resources. You don't. And you have maybe a moral obligation to take care of your children. But I think even, that's a choice too. So that if you guys haven't read Walter Block or seen any of his videos on it, I think it would be a good idea to just hear the arguments. Always hear both sides of the argument, and try to be sympathetic with both of them. But I think that's something to think about. What someone said in the chat, I think Emily was saying it's a massive trauma and a woman suffers, and it's punishment enough. And it really is a difficult decision, I gotta imagine. But actually, for one thing, to go back to the state and how they're screwing everything up, which I love doing, is Danny said, I imagine it's a difficult decision, but I've actually seen it be a very callous decision on a lot of people's part. And seeing people make the decision over and over and over again because they don't value life. They don't understand. And I really think that has a lot to do with the society we live in, the breakdown of the family, the breakdown of the economy, because I think if people really, really, especially in poorer neighborhoods where the state is really very much the family, that I think it really creates this disconnect. And this is the thing I'm trying to figure out with my entire life as well, in terms of like my kids and our bringing our family together and making sure they understand that we're there for each other, and not just in this moment, and not just me as a parent for you, but you as a caretaker for me when I need it, and when the rest of our family is in need, we take them in, we care for them. But when you start to break that down, and so if you live in that kind of a state where people are taking care of each other, it's a much easier decision to dedicate your resources and your future to raising children, because you know you're not in it alone. But in the society we live in right now, sometimes you are in it alone. And so I think we just better be very, very empathetic of what it takes for a woman to make a decision to devote the rest of her life to children.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, that the culture, the society, the community that we create can be one that is conducive to life and can be one that makes life miserable. And if we are going to place the expectation on women that they make choices in alignment with the proliferation of life, then we need to be creating a community and a society that honors the mother. Because right now, I don't believe that we have a society that honors the members of the family at large anyway, but particularly mothers have an intense amount of pressure put on them, especially if they are not coupled off with somebody who has financial resources, because then you are expected to be the everything, the physical provider, the nurturer, the breastfeeder, the grower, the maker of the human, and to make the money and to watch the kids and to get them educated, and blah, 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 and especially in the liberty movement. And Angel and I have talked about this before, that in the liberty movement, in the libertarian movement, the anarchist movement, the expectations of the mother to stay at home, home educate, make good food, grow food, to, do so much to raise the family, but to give up their career and to trust the man to provide that when it doesn't always turn out that way, that is an intense amount of pressure. Now, I did see two people, someone messaged me. First, I'm going to call on Michael. He had raised his hand. And then Simone, you are on deck to speak after Michael, okay? I'll call you up, so just get ready. Michael, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate the opportunity. I really like the discussion in it. You actually kind of stole my thunder there with the culture that we that we create, with our community and certainly in society. You look at society as the insane asylum that it is these days. Who in their right mind would want to bring a child into this kind of circumstance? You have to at least empathize with people that may question what they're bringing that child into, and if it is a situation in which they're doubting that that they can have any kind of opportunity to live a decent life, that's probably something that we should put in their hands, being a parent. And so I can certainly see how that point would come across, but at the same time, we have the opportunity to really change that paradigm when it comes to understanding that, man, we can make it so that, man, we just love the mother. We want to support the mother. We want to, because we understand how much that life means to the rest of our community, that person could be the next, Tesla or something like that. And we want that opportunity to have that person in our community and to raise them as, someone that can take on the best and bring forth the best things that we can offer from our community, and we can teach that to them and so forth. So if we come at this from a different point of view, if we can create that kind of environment and culture within our smaller community, we can change the paradigm where people have a difference, where they can really change the way that they think about what society is and what's possible for the future. Because really we do have to realize we're not on this planet forever, and our progeny is who we become. That's what's left of our representation on this planet. And I think there's got to be something for that.
Yeah, for sure. My friend Alma, she always says that we should breed out statism. And I completely agree. But the more I move into my motherhood and watch our movement evolve in the creation of families, a lot of families were formed during the Ron Paul movement. People coupled off, they found each other, they were mad together, they procreated together, and now these relationships are crumbling. And it's really interesting to watch it happen, because I think having something in common to fight against doesn't necessarily mean that you have what it takes to create a stable foundation. And I know for me, as someone who experienced exactly this, I coupled off during that time period, procreated, we had something to fight against, and we began to fight each other. And if I didn't live in a converted school bus where I could park in tribe, in community with other families, I don't know how I would do it. And I long for the larger tribe. And whether that's, a neighborhood or a city or whatever it may be, I long to be with more than just one family. But without this one family that I cohabitate essentially with, I mean, I have my own home here. I'm in the Bitcoin bus right now. I don't know how I would function without the state, because I do try to walk the walk and live my philosophy, but there are no food stamps for anarchists. There is no support of that type for anarchists. And what happens when you make the choice to bring children into this world lovingly, and you make the choice to be a stay-at-home mother, and you make the choice to do the philosophically consistent things, and that all falls apart? There's no safety net currently, and I think we're in the process of building that now. But I think in order to breed out statism, we've got to figure this out. And for me, growing up in the United States, I look to cultures like in Europe or in Mexico, where families are very tight. They are very united. Multiple generations will live in one home. And I think when you start to create, like Angel was talking about, the destruction of the family, when you start to create strong community, it makes it possible for us to entertain the idea of breeding out statism. But until we do that, until we figure out how to function in an intergenerational, communal way of sorts, I know we're rugged individualists, we're anarchists, libertarians, right? But we do need each other, and not in a codependent, needy, desperate way, but just in a functional, I can't do it all sort of way. So I think that is super interesting. David or Angel, do you want to touch on this before we go to Simone?
Yeah, I'll just say, I mean, I know you and I have been going through similar things, and we've talked a lot about this, and I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be maternal, to really take on the feminine and devote your life to, we don't want to send our kids to school, right? We don't want to send them to the prisons, as David would say. We want to encourage the best in them. We want to encourage creativity. And that really takes us taking ownership of our kids and our kids' education. I mean, think about the state, think about the world we want to create, an anarchist world where there is no state, where there is no welfare, where there is no free healthcare. What do we replace the state with so that women who do this thing, who devote their lives to really raising healthy individuals so that they don't go out there and start raping and robbing and pillaging and creating states? Where is the support for that? And I think, like, everybody take a moment to really think about that. They really think about what your commitment to that would be. Really think about your own relationships. How do you bring this to fruition? Where we should not be children stomping about asking for demanding that the state go away without actually creating the sort of communities that can exist without the state.
100%. I love that. I think that's exactly the solution, is having the community. And I think the challenge is, since the state has controlled television and radio, and they've had a oligopoly for so long, we couldn't find each other, right? Like, there's a voluntarist newsletter from like 1982 or something like that. And I was like, this idea, volunteers have been around for decades. Yeah. Lysander Spooner's from the late 1800s or early 1900s. I'm like, these ideas have been around. We don't need this third party. What we need is, as a lot of the great visionaries admit and profess, to win the hearts and the minds of the people, because freedom is an inner game. We manifest on the outside, and Catherine and I and my friend Kate really vibe on it too. Joe Dispenza, he is one of the key, like, spiritual dudes, to actually help us. Listen to this. He said, if your thoughts can create stress, like the hormones of stress, and this causes illness in your body, how about the thoughts of goodness and wellness creating goodness in your body? So we are so more powerful than we realize. And now, through events like Anarchy, other organizations out there doing great work, we found each other, and there's, 30 or 40 of us on here, and there's different groups that we got connected with. Now it's like, hey, who's going to solve the problem? It's the man in the mirror. It's the woman in the mirror. And so going to Anarchy for all these years, like, we get together, we hang out for a week or 2 weeks, and Catherine's lucky enough, other people hang out for like months. But it's like, I want this thing to end. I want these guys to be my neighbors. I want to go to barbecues with these people. I want to, grow crops together with these people. So it's like, oh, we have to do it, and it starts with the inside. So I think this is why the ideas of anarchy are so scary to the world. They actually coupled it with anarchy and chaos. And so maybe there's a new brand. We can do anarchy and harmony, or transcend the whole thing. And then I was just, voluntarism is peace, is respect. And so I love the idea that all I mentioned to you, Catherine, is that we got to breed out statism. And it's like, yeah, let's have 10 babies. Or what the state's actually doing is they've taken over the foster program. They accelerate the foster program because of what we're talking about. Where is the support? It's here, but they extract our money through taxation. They trick us through the schools. They trick us through the media, through the sports programs, through the flag on the field. And so they actually have, I'm trying to think if it's right, it's a Latin phrase called parens patriae, where it's taking away the parenthood from the mother and father and moving it over to the state. And that's exactly what's happening. The final step for their plan for the United Nations to take over, nationally, the funding is the global carbon tax, but they got to win the minds of the children. And so what they're going to start putting into the curriculum in the schools is how bad the Constitution is and Declaration of Independence is, which compared to monarchy, they're not that bad, but compared to voluntarism, anarchy, they're bad. right? They don't talk about self-ownership in a way that we could. So they're going to start promoting the global citizen. You're going to see this phrase everywhere. Hopefully you bring it to your awareness. You're familiar with the United Nations Agenda 21. Now they're going to say your parents are the problem. See, your parents, they want to drive cars, but cars are creating climate change. And so they're actually dividing mother and father, or mother from son, the father from daughter, and vice versa, so that the state can't be in there. So maybe we can start some like mass adoption agency for like voluntary people that say, and I just saw someone else saying like Christians will start adoption homes where you bring in the babies. And not because there's a political agenda, but because we want to save lives. But this is what the state's doing, is they've created the intergenerational dependency on the state, whereas, let's say, other cultures, as you mentioned, Angel, there's family support. There's an intentional legacy of grandmother and adult and child, and like, hey, let's stick together as a family union. But now let's just kick out the father, kick out the parent, and now we're going to get free stuff from the government. So if we get those incentives and that theft, that whole cycle, now we're like looking at each other, looking at neighbors, let's do it together, and then we can create that support ourselves. So that's like a direction that we can go towards.
I love that, David. And you're getting really good feedback on this in the chat as well. I mean, I think that this is really interesting. And I know for me, I would gladly adopt someone's baby if they didn't want to keep their baby. My problem is I want to be the stay-at-home nurturing mom, and I no longer have a partner, and I we were struggling financially even when I had one. And so where are the financiers? We've got moms in our movement, where are the financiers? Who's going to put their money where their mouth is and fund something like this in a non-governmental way? That's what I want to see taking place here. And, there's the church, there's all sorts of things, but here I think we have a really unique community, and we need to start developing these types of things. Now, Simone, I know you've been patiently waiting. Let me see if you've got your mic unmuted. If you want to come on, you said you had a story to share. Hi, welcome.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, the whole abortion thing. I did have an abortion back in the late 80s for totally personal reasons. I was already a mother of a 4-year-old. And I had a great community. I had family and friends. And I think that's why I don't feel I have any trauma about it. I saw somebody said, oh, it's bad enough. But because of the situation and all that, it was the right thing to do. And I don't hold, anything about it. And again, this was back late 80s, early 90s. Nobody said anything, had a good physician and all that. I would have gone batshit crazy if somebody said, you can't do this, or, this whole, I'm the boss of me, and yeah, the life, again, the seed, the sperm, they're alive, before they even meet, and then the other thing you were talking about, the state taking children. My daughter has 7 kids, and the state a few months ago literally stalked them and took the smallest 5 kids. And every time she goes to court, she meets all of their things. They have no reason to have these kids other than they're all of very adoptable ages. And every time she goes to court now, they have a new set of things. She actually lives in an RV. And when she was in court a week and a half ago, they told her, oh, we can't possibly allow you to live in the RV over the winter times. Kids will never be able to go out and play. Just some really absurd things like that. So yeah, getting back to what you said, Catherine, about, we need to build a community before we can, because some of us do need the state. I mean, my disability check goes to the bank, and I'm in Guatemala. I have to use my ATM card. So, until there's a foundation for us to rely on, we're going to have to do use what we can from the state that we need to. And until, again, there's a foundation that could cushion us or whatever, like you said, the food and the daycare, or being able to have the moms being home and raising these kids. It does take a village to raise the kids of good-hearted people, not the village that the state has in place. The daycares, the school, the whatever else they're doing. It's my daughter was homeschooling, but all their kids were all put in school now. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. It is a very personal, the whole abortion thing is very personal, and I don't think the state should have any say. I mean, there's probably some cases they should, but for most people, I would feel most people are mentally capable of making that decision, and not be, again, there's different things that are going on that might cause that, but the whole thing going on in New York is ludicrous, So anyway, I just wanted to share that and say, when you have a good support system, when you have those things and you have the ability to work through whatever you need to, it makes a big difference. So, there's work to do inside.
It really does. I want to say thank you for sharing this, and I'm really sorry to hear about what your daughter is going through. And I really believe that in many instances, CPS does so much more harm than good. Yeah. One of our speakers this year at Anarchapulco, her name is Nova and she is one of my dear friends. And her children were medically kidnapped, and she was able to get them back. And she won a huge lawsuit, and she's living in her RV, and her children are going to be set financially, at an older age. And because of the foster care system that they were temporarily in, they're going to have their college paid for, So I'm praying for her and for you and what you're going through. And my hope is that there's a silver lining and that good will come, and that the traumas will be healed. And I want you to know my heart is with you, so with you right now.
Yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, just to say too, I am a firm believer that everything is in divine order, whether I see it or not. There's only me and the Creator here. And the interconnectedness of us all, also, like, everything happens for a reason, and this happened 2 years ago, and she won a case as well. But no, we didn't stay in Iowa for that. But anyway, yeah, it is, and to keep a good perspective. And my daughter, she's pretty with it, so she keeps it on the positive side, and she's a fighter too. So again, we see something good out of it. For some reason, it's her thing to do. So absolutely. Somebody has to do it. Somebody has to set the precedent and get these things to change. So might as well be us.
Isn't that the truth? David, I saw you chatting in the comments in there. I have a feeling you have something to say on this subject.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you shared, Simone. And I just want to say it's great to hear that you're complete on the matter there for yourself, because I think as it relates to like helping people understand, some of these decisions can be preempted if we learn about, some stuff in sex education, right? Like this, I think what's happened with the schools is now the state's educating children about their bodies and how it works and these kind of things. And in Africa, like a lot of these people have like complete ignorance a lot of times. And I know Africa's like really genius too, but like in the villages, right? They don't understand how these, various diseases, gonorrhea, or syphilis, these kind of things transfer. So they have all these kind of babies and such, and they don't know about, what you call preconception, conceptual services. But like, so maybe it starts, because it's difficult, right? These are difficult decisions, but if you have that community, like you mentioned, and then having that, that education in the beginning of reducing the probability of having to make that tough decision, or if you have the community around you that you feel support about it, just because CPS, right? This is like CPS we're talking here, is they can come and like kidnap your kids. It's like, this organization, man, is super terrible. And I've had people say, well, they've done some good. I'm like, okay, they might have done some good. I haven't seen it. So if there was a family or some kids that were suffering and they pull them out, okay, God bless them and that. But ultimately, the state is this criminal organization, use coercion. And so perhaps in the beginning, maybe there's like a voluntarist type sex education agency that can be created, or a platform or something where these types of ideas are discussed. And if a young girl has sex early or whatever the situation is, then they can have a community to talk to and get some understanding about it, because a lot of times parents are going through their own statist or religious doctrination, and they aren't the safe person to talk to. Like, you want to have such a trusting relationship between the daughter and the mother or the father, where it's like, hey, I had sex and I'm 15 or whatever it is, and I'm going to come to you, I need help, versus like, oh, I'm going to disown you, or, you know, like give a full backlash of being like an abusive type, authoritarian type parent. So if there's a relationship between the parent and the daughter, maybe there can be a peaceful, complete decision made that's like empowering. It's not fear-based, and it's actually, this is what I want to do. And then if you choose to make that decision, then you can feel complete about it, versus like if your parents force you to do it when you're, 17 or whatever it is, you're under this roof, you're not going to have any babies from that guy or something. It's like, no, I wanted to have that baby, but you guys forced me. So how to understand the value of life, and then to make an empowered decision with support, the community, I think, is a really great idea as well.
David, I'm really interested in this voluntary sex education that you're talking about, because I definitely grew up in the public school system, and I went through sex education. It sort of like broadsided me in 4th grade. Like, what are we even talking about? This is so intense for me. And it was all like gonorrhea and syphilis and bad, danger, danger, danger. And there was no like beauty, creation, life, just the angle that sex and life and children were presented to me through the school. And then you add in the angle of the church, where it's just like, no sex until marriage, the end, and it's a beautiful thing once you're married. Well, I don't have enough information here, like I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm personally really interested in this idea, and I would hope that somebody out there in this world would jump and run with it in some way, because I think it's greatly needed.
Yeah, I think Michael might have something to share. If you want to share about what you got going on, Mike, I think Catherine invited you. But I think, like, for me, just going through Acapulco and understanding self-ownership and personal responsibility, right? I mean, these are the big, like, heavy responsibilities of, like, this is my life. There's nobody else out there. I got to take a look in the mirror, and my left and my friends and my right, and maybe some family. But, like, it's up to me if it is to be. So this is the empowered and I think the natural evolution of understanding that you are your own, as I think Simone's mentioned, I'm my own boss, or I own myself. It's just me and the creator. I think that type of mindset is super empowering, whether you believe in a creator or you believe in evolution, whatever it is, you and the source, or whatever's making your heart beat right now, whatever you believe in, but not outsourcing the protection for your neighborhood, not outsourcing the education for your children, all these different things. It's going to come from us. So like these 30 or 40 people watching live, hundreds of thousands of people are going to watch it later. It really is up to us. So if you have some solutions, we got to do it. Maybe you'll find some people on the online community. There's an Acapulco group. You'll meet us there in Mexico, or there's other groups, in Vegas and various places, around the country, around the world. So you can find the people, but it ain't going to come from Trump or Biden or Hillary or Bloomberg or the mayor, the governor, or the county. These people, they might have some little incremental solutions, or are they Band-Aid? I think the idea is the Declaration of Independence says we just declare ourselves free, and now we're free. Not asking King George for permission. And I think if we can get some support, get some community together, they didn't do it by themselves. There wasn't one person on a mountain saying, we declare we're free. These guys got together in their meetings. They said, give me liberty or give me death, right? It's like they lock the doors. They say, we got to decide this, like it's coming. We got to be free. We're not, no taxation without representation. We're paying 3% stamp tax. This is outrageous. And now it's like 50%, 50%. And people are just like, oh man, we'll put a new puppet in there. So I think just that idea of the community is us, and I have a lot of hope through you guys, because I've met many of you in your life and online. It's like, these are good humans. I got hope in these guys. And so maybe, Michael, you want to share about what you mentioned. You said called Local Dynamo. I don't know what that is. And if you want to take a few minutes here and share that, I'd love to learn more about that as well.
Sure. Yeah. My particular feeling in regard to this, I've always been one that really loves community, and I've wanted to always promote community. And that's why I kind of started the Anarcapulco 24/7, 365 group, is because I wanted to make this, community 365 days a year, but I feel like one of the things that I think people that have been to Anarchapulco experience is something in which, it's that week is like, a year's worth of living in regard to just the connections and all the possibilities and the energy that people bring. These are all things that are really natural to us in our kind of natural state. And when we're given the opportunity to be free, and when we support each other, we can become this dynamo of energy that can deliver a lot more in regard to what really is the product of that kind of freedom is what the United States experienced. Because it's, if you've read the book, The Discovery of Freedom, and I highly recommend it to everybody that gets a chance. You can get it free on Mises.org, I think. So check that out there. But, it essentially outlines how, for all known history, people really didn't make any improvement in their well-being up until we had these few points in history where people and enough community got together that people actually felt free and felt like they could do and had the responsibility to do things the way they wanted to do them, that we really had advances in technology. And certainly in the last 200 years, much of that experience is a result of that freedom. Unfortunately, as David has pointed out, like John Taylor Gatto has pointed out in his books, that is what the elite called overproduction. And they wanted to get rid of that. And so they basically trained us how to forget about that. And so to a large degree, if we went through the regular school system, we've been conditioned in self-defeating behavior. We don't understand how to be free anymore for the most part. And we don't know how to interconnect with being in community. And so that's something that we've got to relearn. And so that's kind of what my project is about, is kind of creating the circumstance where we can, come together, kind of fund a endowment that's essentially a community endowment. And the first project is to essentially build an application that allows us to collaborate. And I've got quite a few businesses interested in being partners in this, so that we can build a local economy and build a model that we can demonstrate at Anarchapulco for people that come, that we can show how to build a community and how to give people the opportunity to see that, like when it comes to transactions, everybody is kind of trained that, you got to pay cash for everything. But we can do all kinds of other things like barter, and we can gift, and we can share, and we can do favors for people. And all of these things are opportunities that if we recognize those transactions in a way that can build each other's reputation, we can really start to see that everybody has value. But it's going to take.
It's really important that we build a strong community and that we honor everyone in it, so that when it comes to these really tough decisions, like choosing life or not, what does that look like? How do we function? How do we navigate in this regard? I mean, this is so important. And Michael, I am so excited about your project, and I'm hoping you can add some more about it in the chat right here, because we do have a question coming in from Facebook, and I want to make sure Angel's able to ask that. And I want to hit up Dr. Buckley here, because we have him on the call as well. So thank you for sharing about that, because that is a really critical part about this. So if you wouldn't mind sharing some more in there. And then Angel, could you bring up this question from Facebook for us?
So Karen on Facebook says she's not saying that the state should be involved, but is it moral? So she's asking a question about morality, and it's a really dicey question, because you might have your convictions and feel very much like you are right, and that what you believe is moral, but morality really is very subjective. It's not an objective thing. And if one is asking, is it moral? And then, well, if it's not moral, that means I can then act in some way. I think that's where things get really scary. And so I think that you have to think about what's moral for you, what's ethical for you. And then think about how you want to be, and be that and model that, and then show people that if they live in this way, they can accomplish what you have accomplished, right? But I definitely don't think having a discussion about morality with someone who believes something different from you is all that meaningful. I think it puts people on the defensive. It makes them think that you're attacking them, and then they start defending themselves rather than thinking about what you're truly talking about. And so I think that's what we're talking about here is like, instead of having this discussion about right and wrong, evil or not, it's like, well, how can we fix this? We didn't plan this conversation out really. And so I really love that where we tend to go as anarchists is, okay, we have a disagreement. How do we fix this? How do we resolve this? It's not about what is right and wrong, not necessarily. It's about how we can live together peacefully, so that everyone can explore their own right and wrong on this planet, so that your time on this planet is about you, about your personal growth, and that your growth can be a light for others. It can be something that inspires others.
I am loving that. And I'm pretty much on the same page as you here, Angel. I feel like morality is a very personal journey. I know that my morals have changed throughout my life. There have been times where I have been so self-righteous because I thought that my way was the right way, the moral way. And 5-10 years later, I'm kind of like, oh, I actually kind of changed my mind on that. So I think when it comes to force and government, we should never be forcing morality. If your morality is so fantastic, then lead the way, set the example, and show us so that you can inspire others to change your behavior. Because here's the deal. Laws don't control people. Laws don't control people for playing government. Laws don't control people who are driving vehicles. Laws don't control people, okay? So legislating morality simply doesn't work. And I think inspiring morality is really what it comes down to. And if you can show a way of life that is so interesting and so exciting to others that it actually inspires people to walk in your footsteps, this is a huge thing. Now, Dr. Buckley, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I see you're on. And if you're willing to unmute, I would love to have your input in this because Dr. Buckley's part of my community, okay? And when I was doing the starving activist thing and just really all in, he saw my imbalance and my unwellness and called me in and helped me to get my life in order. And I truly believe, honestly, that without him as a part of my tribe, I wouldn't be here as the individual that I am today. I just simply wouldn't. And you've really been impactful for me in that regard. And I know that you've been going on a journey as a doctor in terms of your relationship to government. And I feel like, circling back to kind of the beginning of the conversation where we were talking about doctors who were forced to re-implant ectopic pregnancies in another part of the woman's body. I think this is a really important part of this discussion about life and rights. And I was hoping you could touch in on that.
The whole abortion issue is, the whole point of us talking about it is it's a complicated issue. And I can only offer my personal opinion on it. And that, given the evidence of people having near-death experiences, which are, they're numerous, certainly within the hundreds of thousands of cases of people describing popping out of their body, observing their body, and being clinically dead and coming back and stating things that there's no way that they could have known unless they were actually at a vantage point that allowed them to look down upon their body as they describe. All that suggests to me that there's a spirit and then there's a vehicle that's our body. And that I think it's likely that the spirit probably makes a decision to attach itself completely to the physicality of the body at some point after, well after the sperm and the egg have actually met. And so for me, I think the whole issue of the moral discussion about, is abortion murder? Is it not? I think it really will come down to some sort of scientific, understanding that, our spirit does take time to actually incarnate, and that that's something that needs to be taken into account. And I think that there's probably some sort of instrumentation that could probably detect that, honestly. It just needs to be developed.
Oh,
and that would settle the argument. That would settle the argument.
I mean, isn't it fascinating that the doctor in the room brings up spirituality in the topic of abortion? I mean, this is awesome, because to me, I really do believe that spirituality is science and science is spirituality. And, here we have this very thinking-based movement of libertarianism and voluntarism, and the doctor brings in the spirit. And I just want to say thank you for that.
Well, I'm a reverend too, by the way.
Yes, congratulations on that, by the way. And this is something I think is really interesting. Dr. Buckley has been, and I don't know that right now is the perfect time to get into the weeds of it, but he has been looking at alternative ways of functioning in the world as a healer that take the state off of his back and our backs as individuals interacting with him. And I think he's really paving the way. And I feel like we need to do a whole show kind of about those types of things, the licensing and the regulations and that sort of stuff, because Dr. Buckley's really paving the way in this regard. And it's still a lot for me to wrap my head around, because I'm going through my own legal stuff right now, but I keep telling him 2020, I want to study what you're doing so that I can learn more. And Emily's saying, yes, let's do a show on that in the future. So we can note that down as something we want to talk about moving forward. Angel, you had messaged me that you had something to say, and I don't know if it was piggybacking on to what Dr. Buckley just said, or if you're wanting to shift gears.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, because, again, we're anarchists, although David said something earlier, and I'm not sure I want to define myself but as against the state, and I really like voluntarians. We might have to start having that discussion too. But anyway, what I shifting back to the state and the ways in which it should not be involved. One of the things I find most insidious about the state being involved in any of these decisions is that they use it in order to divide us. This, the debate between where they give us very few choices, and you have to pick what side you're going to be on. So take a position on abortion. Which side are you on? And now you have to vote and accept wholesale the entire platform of a group of people because maybe abortion or the right to life or the right to choose is your issue. And I really hate that. I really hate that we become these it's like cable, actually. It's like you got to take all the shit that you don't want in order to get the one thing that you do. And that's the way to a continuation of really bad policy. Is if you can't pick and choose, if you can't individualize, that's how we end up always supporting the sorts of things that we don't agree with. And that's why the anti-war movement, which, once was that was part of the Democratic platform, why it just completely went away. And none of the people who were so very, very anti-war were up in arms because there was all this other stuff, the right to choose. And so now that the Democrats are no longer anti-war, particularly politicians, their voices just go away because now they've moved on to thinking about the right to choose. And and accepting that those Democrats who are now, the Democratic politicians who are now supporting that position, they're also very pro-war, right? They're also for being in countries all around the world and bombing countries all around the world. And so that's what I don't like about it, is it creates this division between us, and it creates this fog from which we can't really see. Well, not we, obviously we can see, but I mean, which people have a hard time seeing through because they get really passionate about these topics. And they get really passionate about these topics because the government is telling them to be passionate about it, telling them to take a position, and telling them that the enemy takes an opposite position. Right? The government is really insidious in the way they force us to communicate.
Well, they definitely create polarization where there maybe doesn't need to be. And I think on this topic, here's a question from Emily, and she says, her question is to anarchists who are okay with abortion. How do you tie up the belief that we must respect others' bodies and their humanity and right to life and safety and freedom with being okay with destroying another person's body and life? The two, to me, are mutually exclusive. And to that, I want to piggyback on to what Dr. Buckley is saying here, is that we don't know when the spirit enters the body. And Angel had brought up at the beginning of the conversation that, a child growing inside of a mother is taking her resources, right? And so where is that line between mother and child? And none of us here have the answer for that. And Dr. Buckley was saying maybe at some point there could be some sort of technology that can determine when the soul has entered the body and it has moved from a clunk of cells and into a sentient being. And maybe there is an exact moment where it goes from black to white, and maybe there's not. Maybe it's gray. And so for me, for anarchists who are okay with abortion, what does okay with abortion mean? For me, it's not something that I want to do unless it's absolutely required. I want as many babies as my body can produce. I mean, I love children. I love being a mother. It's beautiful for me. But with that being said, I have had to make my own choices in the past, and my friends have had to make their own choices in the past, and I understand the dilemma taking place. And sometimes it's not about right and wrong. It's not about black and white. Sometimes people have been raised in such a way that they have literally been trained to be ashamed of being pregnant. And so there was a conversation earlier in here about, even just having a baby and giving it up for adoption. I mean, going through a pregnancy, you can't hide it. Everybody knows, right? Everybody knows. And so as a woman, you are on full display, and it may not be black and it may not be white, but it is a really difficult decision. And it is one that millions and millions and millions of women make all the time, every year. And it happens a lot. I've read that when I was in college, women age 22 and younger, 1/4 of them had an abortion age 22 or younger. And that only goes up, right, as women get older. So this is something that is taking place. It's something that's happening, and it's not black and it's not white. And as an anarchist, I can without a doubt say that creating a law to ban abortion will not stop it. It won't stop it. It will still happen, and it might and probably and likely will become more dangerous. And so that is the problem with legislating morality. We don't know the point in which the spirit enters the body. We don't know the point in which these beautiful creatures become sentient beings. We don't know that point. So I don't have a right to make that decision for you. And that would be my response to that. David, I hear you. What do you have to say here?
Yeah, no, I was going to say as it relates to self-defense, right? So if somebody's coming at me and I feel my life is threatened, I have a moral justification to eliminate that person, right? So if there was a doctor, let's say my wife was pregnant, this lady that I love is going to deliver my baby, she's pregnant, and the doctor that I trust or whoever it is, they're like, hey, this situation is complicated, and it's most likely your lady's going to die here if she has a baby. That seems to be an easy decision for me. I want this lady to be alive, and have a life or a relationship with her versus the baby. And so this goes back to what we mentioned earlier about the eviction type philosophy. So again, if somebody believes that this is it's like a trespasser in their body, then they can morally justify it to themselves. Whatever they believe in, it might not be something that you or I believe in or anybody else, but if they believe that's their right or that's morally justified, then they can make that choice because, I was raised in a religious home, and so there was only one way. And then you get out in the real world, you're like, oh, there's like a million different ways, right? The phrase is, how many ways is there to skin a cat? A million, right? So there's no one size fits all. So to, as one of you fine ladies mentioned before, to look at the issue from both sides and actually all sides. So it's not just over like a coin. There's like so many different angles, at least 360, maybe more, but you can look at it from a different angle. So maybe I'm ignorant or maybe you're ignorant, but the great Socrates said there's one thing that I know, that's that I know nothing. So I think come to the subject matter of super humility of like saying, I'm trying to do right. Help me, my friends, my community, my family, whoever. I'm trying to do right, and I need support. And that criminal organization that uses coercion and violence, intimidation against me, I don't need your help. Thanks. I don't need your force upon my life, I think is the key point, because how do you like force your morality in other people? They have a right to their life, their travel, their liberty, and their property. And so where that line is for you, you got to decide. And to keep this third party, nameless, authoritarian, superstition, religion, institution out of our lives, I think is the key thing. And then have support around us. I think that's also really important.
Yes. Don't let the state divide us. No divide and conquer. I mean, that's what Angel was just describing, right? And as long as we allow the state to infiltrate our society, our community, our way of thinking, our academic institutions, everything that we do, they're going to keep us fighting, because as long as we're fighting each other, we're not looking up at the state and seeing that they're actually the oppressive thumb that's squishing down upon us, right? Which really, do we need to fight them or just step out of the way? And that's really what I like to advocate for, is just moving out of the way and doing something else and not participating in all of that. So, I think it's really important. It keeps circling back to community, right? And not legislating morality, and really allowing our moral direction to be a beacon of light as opposed to an iron fist, right? Because if we are trying to force others to live the way that we think is best, we are actually infringing on their rights and we are violating them. And even on topics like this that are so sensitive and so nuanced and so variable, right? I mean, every single one of us can have a different situation and circumstance and background and upbringing that leads us to make a specific decision. And so to honor that in each other, I think, is really, really important. So I would like to put a call out for final feedback and questions. And if there's something you want to say, unmute yourself or raise your hand, leave a comment in the chat here. Our moderators looking on Facebook and YouTube as well, because I feel like we're really reaching a beautiful place here of, love really is what it comes down to. Is that we don't have all the answers and we can't dictate what the solutions are, right? Because we're not the bosses of other people, but we can do our best to deduce what is real and what is moral from what we know. And I think that's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, as the moderators just kind of check up the final comments here, I was just going to say this conversation is so awesome and peaceful for all you guys, because you have a moral compass of nonviolent communication and peace and respecting the individual right. I don't think I could have this conversation with some of my religious family or friends or people out there, because it's only one way. And this is the one topic that there's a lot of gray areas. And for me to impute my morality onto you is a violation of your self-ownership and your rights. So I just want to just chime in for that 2 seconds that it was really awesome and peaceful. And I think we can progress and evolve positively with this group of 30, 40 people and maybe 30, 40,000 people next time.
Well, isn't this what this is all about, right? Here we are having this very public conversation through all of these different platforms, and there are so many opinions coming through, and everyone is being so loving. And I think this is how we become beacons of light, and this is how we show others that there is a way to find a solution, to have a conversation, to have a dialogue without being authoritative and without bullying one another and without putting each other down or name calling or dictating how people should behave. I mean, I think it's absolutely beautiful. I love being a part of this community, and I am just so grateful. So I'm not seeing hands raising. I'm not seeing chats coming in. I do want to let everybody know that Dr. Buckley is one of our sponsors this year for Anarchapulco, and he is going to be facilitating a practitioner space where there are all sorts of different healers coming that can work with you on a variety of modalities to help you get your health in order. Dr. Buckley, could you take 30 seconds to 1 minute to give us a little overview of what you're providing for this year's event?
I'm providing a smorgasbord of alternative health to help anyone who's looking for a better state of health to come on in. And we're offering stem cells. We're offering IV nutrition. I've got some of the best body workers you'll ever find coming to join us. I got practitioners that do various forms of really effective, very powerful, energetic forms of medicine. So I would just, encourage everyone to listen to the interviews that we've done so they can get a taste of who it is that we're bringing in and what we're offering. I don't think those have been released yet, but they will be soon, I know. So it's a great opportunity. Anybody that's looking for a better state of health, should definitely look at coming.
It's going to be amazing. So last year on the health and wellness stage, there was a huge demand for people to be treated by the speakers and the doctors and the practitioners that were up on the stage. And so we have worked really hard to create this opportunity to bring our speakers, our practitioners, the people who are healing the world with the people who need it the most. Now, Dr. Buckley, there is a question here in the chat about the stem cell therapies. Would you be willing to expand about that a little bit, maybe where those are sourced and what that does?
Yeah, well, we get those from Vita, which is a stem cell provider that's located within Mexico. They are the largest stem cell provider in all of Latin America. They've been doing stem cells the longest in all of Latin America. They have certification that is the equivalent of the FDA in terms of their standards that they meet for those that are concerned about such a thing. And the stem cells are not taken from aborted fetuses. If anybody's wondering about that, they're actually derived from umbilical cords. And every stem cell that's sourced is screened for a variety of pathogens or illnesses that we can be nearly 100% certain that they're free of any contaminants that would cause any problems. So if you're looking to really just kind of upgrade your health and improve your overall repair within your system, these mesenchymal stem cells are really one of the best things you can do for your body.
Yeah, awesome. I've been hearing a lot about stem cells. I'm really interested in this. I feel like there are just phenomenal things that can happen. Luis Fernando Mises, who is also one of our speakers at Anarchapulco, he recently went down to Mexico and had stem cell therapy. He was bit by a brown recluse just like I was. And he's about a year and a half ahead of me on his healing journey. And he said that his recent experience with stem cells has completely transformed his health and his body. So I'm really interested in learning more about this myself and participating in that because stem cells really can help to repair your body in so many ways. Let's see here. So did we have anybody who had anything else to chime in? I think that was kind of fitting there, asking about Go ahead.
I'll throw in a little bit more, Catherine. Number one, again, I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to come out. And man, I am really enjoying this whole thing that you guys have put together this year. I think this is really an important part of really getting people in the right mindset in regard to being ready for Anarchapulco and really getting this thing off. You know, being the fact that we're going to have 10 days and actually I'm trying to encourage people to come a little bit longer. So on each of the end weekends, I'm going to be having some things going on as well. I'm going to call it the Anarchapulco experience. But, you know, I think we really have this opportunity to really, you know, draw from all this talent and invite all these cool people and the ability to share all this knowledge. It is going to change our lives, and this is just an opportunity to kind of get people ready for it, you know. And so, man, you guys are doing such a great thing. Shout out to Ken and David and Angel and, you know, all you guys that are just keep bringing it all the time with all the energy that you do.
Thank you.
You know, much respect.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really awesome being here, a part of this community. And thank you, Michael, for all that you do. It's really important for each of us to be here showing up and participating. And truly, I want to say thank you to all of you because this is the highlight of my week. I really, really love it. It's a lot of fun. So I'm feeling like this is a good time to start winding down. Angel, David, do either of you have some closing statements on this topic of life, choice, abortion, the state, and anarchy?
Yeah, I just love you guys. I really do. I love the way we communicate. I love that we could all come together, and I'm hearing different perspectives, that I'm hearing them really voiced in a way that is conducive to building and not destructive. I'm so proud of us. I'm so proud of us, and I'm glad we get to share this with the world. So yeah, thank you so much. Makes me want to have some babies.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I echo that too. I got a lot of love for you guys, and you guys are the visionaries of humanity. You know, so we've talked about many subjects in the previous weeks and months. And guess what? Once we make the state obsolete, we will be responsible, as we are, to resolve these kind of problems and questions and challenges. So just as people ahead of us, Sanders, Spooner, Murray Rothbard, you mentioned the book there, Discovery of Freedom. I haven't read that yet, but these kind of authors, they put it out in the text form. We're communicating in video format. I think in the future, you know, as YouTube goes away because they're censoring some of the good people out there, there'll be other video platforms we can upload and communicate and have a conversation about this. But it is winning the minds and the hearts of our children and our children's friends or grandchildren, or this is intergenerational solution building I think we're doing here. So this is probably the most divisive topic on earth, but we handle it with such love and humility and I think unity, despite it being so polarizing, as you mentioned. So we can do it, you know. So however we do it, through art and comedy or written word or video or audio, and you guys start your podcast or whatever, we can do it. We have this great foundation of morality and sincere intention to create the world that we want to build and live in. And you guys are going to do it. We're going to do it together with Anarchapulco and any other organizations, associations that we're building, that you're building. And I have a lot of hope in the future. Looking forward to next week. So maybe, Catherine, you can share what is happening next week before your closing comments also.
Totally. So next week, we're kind of keeping in the same general kind of scope of conversation. We're talking about anarchy and sexual relationships. So this is going to include traditional, alternative, polyamory. What is an anarchist relationship and how does that work? We have the little saying on our slide here, consensual is sexy. And I'm loving that because I agree. And boy, consensual can get quite sexy, right? So we're going to talk about that and what that means and how do we function in an anarchist world with sexual relationships, with marriage, with these types of things. It's a really interesting conversation, especially for those of us who have been through marriages that may or may not have been good things, or relationships in the past, or tried different types of relationship building. So this is going to be a really, really interesting conversation. Now, Emily's asking in the chat, she's going to be in the wrong time zone next week, and she is wanting to know if she can catch up and watch the replay. Yes, these are always available on Facebook in the streamed version as well as YouTube, and then we actually upload an edited version as well. So you can check both of those out on our Facebook and YouTube channels. I'm sure that they stay up on DLive as well. I don't know about Twitch. It's not a platform I'm very familiar with, but if you come to our YouTube channel or our Facebook page, you can for sure catch those replays. I also have them going on the Homestead Guru Facebook page. So with that being said, go ahead.
And I also want to say you can go to anarchapulco.com and check out the blog, and all of the videos are also posted in those blogs.
Yes, absolutely. So we post little announcements, then we go in and retroactively edit them to embed the posts. So thank you for that, Angel. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think it is a really important one, and I have a lot to think about. This conversation here with you tonight has really got my gears spinning, and it has me thinking about things in a new perspective. You know, when does life begin, and when do my rights begin and end in relation to a child that is growing inside of me? This is a fascinating question. I think we all agree that the state does not have the right to come in and tell us how to function in this regard. But when we are talking about ourselves, there is a moral dilemma and a question that we need to be asking ourselves. And so having support and community and people that we can talk to openly without being shamed, without being chastised, without having names called or fingers pointed, that is invaluable. And that is the infrastructure of a voluntarious free society. That is what we need right there. It comes down to communication. So I'm very grateful for the way this conversation went and all of the thoughts that are coming through my head. I'm going to have to do some journaling tonight. So with all that being said, these conversations are even better in real life. And I'm sure you know that, right? They're fantastic when we get together, we're around the campfire, at the turtle party, we're hanging out at the pool, we're down at the beach, we're sitting in the audience, we're standing on the stage, we're sharing our ideas, and we get to vibe on one another. And that is why I am here, because I love Anarchapulco. I love what it does for me as an individual, and I love what it does for our community. It is just one of the most fantastic experiences of my entire life. And like Michael alluded to earlier, yeah, I spent some time there. Maybe it was David. I've spent many, many months there, 8.5 of the past year, and they were the best 8.5 months of my life because the people I was around, the culture I was immersed in. I love Anarchapulco. So if you are wanting to attend this February, the ticket prices just went up. Hotel rooms are still for sale, and you got to get in on these before they sell out. They're available now. You can get them on our website, anarchapulco.com. We are in the process of rolling out announcements for who's going to be speaking on what stages. We have already announced the Dollar Vigilante speakers, the health and wellness speakers. I think we're very close to the family camp speakers, right, Angel and David? We're getting there? Okay. So stay tuned. There's information coming out. The main stage speakers have been announced. You can find all of that at anarchapulco.com. There's all sorts of great information on our website, including articles and links about what to expect while you're there, what to expect from the event, from Mexico, what to pack. We are posting weekly updates on the blog, so please go check out the blog. Angel is editing her heart out. Our writers are writing their hands off. It is just a really, really fun project that we are all working so very hard on, getting video interviews up, written exposés on our speakers, and event information as well as living anarchy posts, lots of stuff about unschooling and money and the philosophy of anarchy. So go check that out, anarchapulco.com, and you can go to blog.anarchapulco.com to find the blog specifically. And to everybody who are joining us on Facebook, on Twitter, on DLive, on Twitch, and right here on Zoom, I want to extend my personal thanks because I am eternally grateful to be able to share this time with you once a week. And from the whole team here at Anarchapulco, thank you. Peace, love, and anarchy.
Peace, love, anarchy.